What is the most ridiculous thing that you used to believe as a child? I'll go first.
So I believed that I was born into sin, and because I was born into sin, which is out of my control, and born imperfect, that I was deserving of hell, eternal torture. And the only thing that gave me any kind of worth was the fact that a deity was going to forgive me for being born imperfect. And to be able to do that, he sacrificed his kid, even though he's an all-powerful being and he could have just forgiven, period. But he did this weird blood sacrifice, and then I was told I needed to accept that weird blood sacrifice. And if I didn't, I would burn in hell forever, again, for being an imperfect person. And then I was told as a woman, it's important for me to be submissive to the other gender because, my gender sinned first.
Oh, the word homosexual was never in the Bible. It wasn't in the Bible till 1946, and the word it replaced translates to pedophile. Wonder why they did it, must be a mystery.
I regret becoming an ex-Christian, and I'm here to warn every Christian out there. Do not make the same mistake I did. Now that I have nowhere I'm told to go on Sunday mornings, I literally have to do anything I want. Sometimes it's so hard to choose, I just stay in bed and catch up on sleep all morning. Now that I'm not giving 10% of my income to the church, I have so many hard choices on how to spend that extra income. Sometimes I can't choose how to spend it at all, so I'll invest it or even give it to people who need it more than me. I mean, imagine thinking sin is made up and not feeling unworthy all the time.
I finally get it. As a former evangelical pastor, since leaving the faith, I've learned from a lot of evangelicals that tell me that the reason I fell away from the faith is because I didn't fear God enough. Because if I did, I would have gained the wisdom to really know what was right from wrong. And now, after all this time, I finally realize why they're right. Because after years of studying the Hebrew Bible and the Christian scriptures, in the languages in which they were written, it would seem that they clearly indicate that people of faith should mostly be focused on doing justice, forsaking wealth, caring for people experiencing poverty and oppression, welcoming immigrants, visiting people in prison, the things pagans do. It must be that I didn't fear God enough to see that what God really wants from people of faith is to accumulate wealth, to seek worldly power, defend injustice, and cast people out or put them in jail when they are desperate and in need of shelter. I guess I shouldn't have taken the verse that says to study to show yourself approved so seriously. I should have just been more afraid of God. Oh well.
The scientist, do you believe in God?
Every description of God that I've heard holds God to be all-powerful, very typical, and all good. And then I look around and I see a tsunami that killed 250,000 people in Indonesia, an earthquake that killed 250,000 people in Haiti, and I see earthquakes and tornadoes and disease, childhood leukemia, and I see all of this and I say, I do not see evidence of both of those being true simultaneously.
I have a question for Christians that believe in hell and also believe in...
I will never be one to tell you what you should believe or what you should not believe. What I will say is that if you want to say that where we don't understand things, that's where God rests, the God of the gaps argument, because I get asked that all the time. What was around before the universe? I don't know. Must have been something, God. So they got to stick in God where we're not there yet. And I just say, well, we got top people working on that. It's a current frontier. We're not there yet. And given the history of the moving frontier, where people had previously said, well, God must be operating, we're long past that. Those explanations have come. And so there's no compelling reason to say God did it and then sort of give up and go on to the next problem.
The God of the gaps refers to a way of arguing that treats gaps in scientific knowledge as evidence for God. On this view, science explains a whole bunch of things, but when it cannot explain something, you just say, well, science can't explain it, therefore God did it. This is an argument from ignorance, and it's an informal fallacy. Now, maybe an example will help. Years ago, superstitious people thought that lightning came from the lightning god. Now, this was a gap in knowledge where many people just assumed God did it. However, using the methods of science, we now have come to believe that science can be explained as an electrical discharge. Now notice the god of lightning disappears as soon as you go into the lab and study atmospheric physics. Also notice how on this view, as scientific explanations increase, God explanations decrease. By the way, this is why many people think they have to choose between science and God. If you define God as a god of the gaps, then of course science and God are always going to be enemies. While there are some who believe in a god of the gaps, most thoughtful Christians do not posit God merely to plug in a gap in knowledge. Instead, they're positing a God where we have strong positive evidence for God as the best explanation of the available evidence. So these arguments are not based on what we don't know, they're based on what we do know. Interestingly, the Bible never defines God as merely a god of the gaps. As Oxford mathematician John Lennox points out, Genesis doesn't begin with the words, "In the beginning, God created the bits of the universe we don't understand." No, it says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." He created the whole show. This is why when Sir Isaac Newton discovered the law of gravity, he didn't say, "I have discovered a law, so I don't need God." Instead, he said, "This most beautiful system of sun, planets, and comets could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being." Isaac Newton did not view God as a god of the gaps, and neither should you.